It was a day to make history. 4 leaders, 4 crises. The fate of the world in the balance, but no one caught it on film. Until now. July 20th, 1944. Today, Winston Churchill plots Armageddon.
Of using poison gas against German civilians.
Today, Franklin Roosevelt fights for his life.
I don't know if I can make it.
Today, Joseph Stalin decides the destiny of Poland. And today, 12 million lives hang on the outcome of an assassin's mission. His target, Adolf Hitler. For 6 decades, no footage of these momentous events existed. It all had to be created. The bodies belong to actors. The faces are molded by computers. The story comes straight from history. It's like traveling back in time. Before your eyes, the past comes back to life. The dead speak, and the day the war could have ended is relived minute by minute. In the very heart of Germany, a plot to kill the nation's leader takes off. Colonel Klaus von Stauffenberg boards a plane to Hitler's headquarters. His assignment, to brief Hitler. His real mission, to deliver a bomb in his briefcase. If Hitler dies, the war ends, and more lives are saved than were lost in the first 5 years combined. 6 weeks after the Allied landings on D-Day, the tide of the Second World War has turned. Germans are now dying on 2 fronts. In the east, fighting the Soviets, and in the west, fighting the British and Americans. Outnumbered and outgunned, German soldiers know the war is lost. But their commander-in-chief won't quit. Hitler now lives in a fantasy world. A secret command post ringed by electric fences, fanatical guards, and 80,000 landmines.
In
July 1944, Hitler had gone to the world of the bunker, deep, deep in the East Prussian forests. In all of Hitler's sleeping quarters, there was always a very simple camp bed, a bedside table on which there would be nothing but a picture of his mother. He wouldn't have any personal effects with him.
In this Spartan retreat, something else is banned. The truth. Each morning, Hitler's valet, Heinz Linge, brings a simple breakfast and Germany's overnight bombing reports. The reports have been purged of any news the Führer can't stomach.
He greatly suffered from sleeplessness, which often led him to working through the night and only going to bed towards 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning.
Haben Sie gut geschlafen, mein Führer?
Einigermaßen. Wie üblich haben mich die Putzfrauen mit ihren Besen geweckt.
Barely sleeping at all, Hitler has become paranoid and reclusive. The Allied leaders know Hitler's unstable, but none of them suspect he's been marked for death by his own countrymen. Unlike Hitler, Winston Churchill doesn't work in a secret location.
Prime Minister Winston Churchill would wake up between 8 and 8:30 in the morning, and then he'd do a surprising thing. He'd stay in bed. He had a specially constructed breakfast tray that would fit around his huge belly, and he'd sit and work on his papers all morning. He hated loud noises. His secretary, Marion Holmes, would use a specially constructed typewriter that was silent, and the guards outside his room would stand on specially constructed mats.
Prime Minister Churchill's residence at number 10 Downing Street was damaged in an air raid, so he relocated to a bedroom above the cabinet war rooms.
Where are the overnight reports on the flying bomb raid? Thank you.
With nightly bombings on London and other British cities, suddenly the war in the air took a chilling turn for the worst. Hitler unveiled his new vengeance weapon, his V1 Doodlebug.
Hitler's purpose? Sheer terror. With his unmanned rockets, he can take the war right to the doorsteps of the British people. By July 19th, Hitler's missiles have killed 3,000 Londoners and wounded 8,000 more. Each morning, Churchill gets the casualty reports. But against rockets, he's helpless. Britain has been fighting Germany for almost 5 years. The nation is hemorrhaging blood and money. If Hitler died today, the slaughter would end, and Britain would be saved from ruin. In Moscow, as July 20th dawns, the Soviet leader sleeps, the only time he's not dangerous.
The Soviet people lived in fear of their dictator Joseph Stalin. They believed he lived and worked in the Kremlin, where the light shone in his office 24 hours a day. In fact, he lived and spent most of his time at Kuntsevo, his villa, his dacha, 20 minutes from the center of Moscow. And it was from there that he directed the terror, commanded the armies, and ran the Soviet Empire.
As usual, Stalin has worked into the night. One of the few Russians who doesn't fear him is his housekeeper, Valechka.
Valechka was a simple, always smiling Russian peasant woman who looked after all Stalin's appetites. She was probably his part-time mistress, too. In fact, in all the years after his death, she never spilled a single one of his secrets.
The greatest secret: how much blood is on his hands.
Stalin was responsible for the death of millions. He would often finish an order with the short reprimand: "Fail this, and we'll make you shorter by a head."
On the morning of July 20th, Stalin's armies advance into Eastern Europe. He has squandered more soldiers than even Hitler, but the longer the war drags on, the more countries will fall under his thumb. So for now, Stalin wants to keep Hitler alive. In the US, Franklin Delano Roosevelt heads toward an historical fourth term as president. Yet the world's most powerful man is crippled.
This is a glimpse of the president as Americans would rarely, if ever, have seen him. He is, at this point in his life, 62 years old, an ill man. He's had serious heart problems. He's lost a lot of weight, 20 pounds. He's on digitalis, which makes him gray and increases his weight loss.
The president's son, Jimmy, is his unofficial chief of staff.
Let me introduce Fowler. He's the president's dog. He's a good guy. Hey, good boy.
Oh my God, I don't think Hitler feels as bad as I do. I got better to short. All right, Jimmy. What are we doing today?
Well, today, Mr. President, you're going to inspect the 5th Marine Division, who for the past 3 months have been practicing amphibious-based landings. Today, sir, they're going to show you what they can do.
The president is here in San Diego. He's en route to a strategy meeting with General MacArthur and Admiral Nimitz to talk about the Pacific strategy. It's been a long island-hopping campaign, but Roosevelt knows there will be more battles and more heavy casualties to come.
Like Hitler, Roosevelt fights on 2 fronts, in Europe and in the Pacific. If Hitler dies today and Germany surrenders, FDR could throw everything he has against Japan. Today, the fate of millions lies in Stauffenberg's hands. In 3 hours, his plane will land at Hitler's headquarters. If all goes as planned, the war will be cut short and millions of lives saved by the death of one man. On a German plane, an assassin speeds toward Hitler's secret headquarters. Blinded in one eye while fighting in Africa, Klaus von Stauffenberg clearly sees his mission.
He was very good looking. He was tall, but he was not imposing.
In July 1944, Stauffenberg's eldest son was just 8 years old.
He was a very lively man who laughed a lot. I think he was famous for his laugh. And so
for 6 decades, no footage of these momentous events existed. It all had to be created. The bodies belong to actors. The faces are molded by computers. The story comes straight from history. It's like traveling back in time.
Brilliant.
Today, Franklin Roosevelt fights for his life.
I don't know if I can make it.
Today, Joseph Stalin decides the destiny of Poland. And today, 12 million lives hang on the outcome of an assassin's mission. His target, Adolf Hitler. Before your eyes, the past comes back to life. The dead speak, and the day the war could have ended is relived minute by minute. It was a day to make history. 4 leaders, 4 crises. The fate of the world in the balance, but no one caught it on film. Until now. July 20th, 1944.
Bloody calculation.
Today, Winston Churchill plots Armageddon.
Of using poison gas against Germans.
In the very heart of Germany, a plot to kill the nation's leader takes off. Colonel Klaus von Stauffenberg boards a plane to Hitler's headquarters. His assignment, to brief Hitler. His real mission, to deliver a bomb in his briefcase. If Hitler dies, the war ends, and more lives are saved than were lost in the first 5 years combined.